All right. Good morning, everyone. Always wanted to do that. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. My guest is a little on my bad side because I offer everybody a show to do at either 8 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And she's the first person to take me up on the 8 o'clock offering. I never thought I was going to have to do it, but here we are doing a morning show. Pete, Nurse Colleen, I don't know how you guys do it every morning, 7:10, up in your kitchen doing this. Maybe you found some kind of hack, but here we are doing an 8 o'clock show, and I'm exhausted, and I am not ready to go. But we are going to still have a great show for you today. I've got an amazing guest today, and if you've noticed, we've been on a trend of marketing and PR in the industry, mainly because it's hard, right? At the end of the day, cannabis is going to be a commodity, right? It's going to be very hard to differentiate yourself. Now, the companies themselves are very different, but they're all selling a very similar product, right? So how did you differentiate yourself? And then on top of that, you're so restricted in the things that you can do that you've got to get very creative. So I think a lot of the people that we've on the show have been extremely creative. My guest today does not differ from that. And I will also admit that I might butcher her name when I say it, but please welcome my guest, the Director of Marketing for Curealeaf, Yesenia Garcia.
You got it. You got the name. So,
yes.
Yes, congratulations. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm very excited to be on. I don't know why I chose the 8 o'clock after I did so and I committed. I was like, yeah, that probably wasn't my wisest moment, but nonetheless, excited to be on. And
well, I really appreciate you being on, and I appreciate you waking up at 8 o'clock with me, and hopefully we've got a few other folks that I woke up alongside with us. But I want to get into your story and Curaleaf. You guys, according to I don't want to say the last OMMU. I did a quick search of my email, so probably one of the last 4 or 5. You guys are the 3rd largest in the state. You're doing great, but you've got an extremely interesting background. I looked on your LinkedIn and didn't find a whole lot of articles, but you've organized events for the nationwide tour for the PGA, music festivals. You've done some serious large deals in sports. Just huge sales and marketing background. Is this something that you've always done? How did you find, it takes a special person to be able to advocate like that. So how did you get into marketing and be able to find the success that you have? Because it also looks like you've taken a few trips doing this on your own as well.
Right. So I started my career with a Native American tribe in South Florida. And through my employment with them, I was able to really dive into pretty much a little bit of everything, right? So we did, we opened our in-house agency when I was with the tribe. So they used to outsource their work across 3 agencies and wanted to bring everything in. I ran their in-house agency for about 9 years, left, did my own stuff for a while, found it very exciting and fulfilling, but kind of got lured back into going back with the tribe. I went back for about 2 years. And by working with a Native American tribe who has a gaming establishment, obviously we had our own restrictions at the time, right? So I got to deal with, like you mentioned, sports deals, putting together concerts, very large scale events, definitely engagement in the community. The tribe was very big on giving back, which has always been one of the things that I look for when I'm on a path within my career, right? So it was just very exciting. I got to negotiate deals. I got to put sponsorships together, deal with different people in the entertainment industry, and it really gave me a diverse portfolio. Had to be very creative at times because of the gaming side. So when we were doing anything with the Native American side, had a little more freedom, but once you touch into the gaming, you do end up with some of the similar restrictions, right? With age barriers and things like that. So I think it was definitely a good preparation for joining the cannabis industry.
Oh, I can only imagine, especially with gaming, it's probably one of the closer industries that has restrictions similar to cannabis, at least from an age base. But, I think it's a little bit more welcomed. If I remember correctly, and I hope I'm not confusing the tribes, you guys were able to actually advertise on like 40% of the outfield when the Marlins played at whatever the hell it's called now, Dolphin Stadium. Pro player to me, it'd still be Joe Robbie. But I couldn't imagine going to the new Miami Marlins stadium right now and seeing Curaleaf along the outfield wall. So I imagine, even though you had that experience in a restricted market or a restricted industry, that there was still some more tweaks that you had to making the jump into cannabis, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the advantage of doing it with the gaming and the tribe is that depending on our audience and what the restrictions were, um, you could promote, like you said, with the PGA Tour. So the tribe had a golf course, so you can promote the golf course. So we had a little bit more of a diverse portfolio and still keeping the tribe's name intact. So I think that helped. But although the cannabis industry definitely has all the restrictions that we all are very familiar with, I think we're starting to see some areas open up a little bit more. And it's sometimes about the educational component more than a product pitch, right? So as you're going to educate, if you take that approach, I think we can see our efforts go a little further.
No, and I can definitely see Cureleaf taking that educational advantage. I mentioned the 710 morning show, and they're very educational in what they do. They're always topical. And I know that Cureleaf, I don't know, but I'm assuming based on watching that show that you guys are a big part of it. They're always looking at your products, going to your dispensaries, the gift cards and everything else. So I can see that educational approach in motion. And then, the one thing that I really like, and you had mentioned this with the tribe, is you like to be part of a company that gives back. And it seems like you're doing that at Curaleaf as well. I mean, when I searched your name, and I searched Curealeaf, just, your name, Curaleaf, easiest Google search I can, and give you my journalistic abilities there. You would raise 38,000 for Badges of Courage, which is a breast cancer organization. And literally that's the number one thing. There's probably like 10 articles on that before I found anything else. Can you talk to us, about what you guys are doing in the community and some of the charitable work as well?
Sure. So it's definitely important for us to give back to the community, not only with organizations that support the, our patient base, but I mean, we've done everything from our employees going out and doing beach cleanups, collections with the hurricane, those people affected, and giving donations back. So, but with Badges of Courage specifically, so we partnered with them back in October for breast cancer awareness, but it is a relationship that we have continued to maintain. So we also did some efforts with them in December for Giving Tuesdays, and then back again in February with cancer awareness. So we like to continue our relationships, right? And have touch points with organizations that are really making a difference in the communities that we serve. And I think Macarena with Badges of Courage does an excellent job. And so we're really happy with that partnership, and the ability to continue to partner with them. So it's not like a one-off, okay, we did a donation and we're done. And I have to say that we're very thankful for our patient base in that regard, because yes, the company did contribute 10% back of our pink pre-rolls for the month, and our staff really got around doing the collections in the dispensaries. But without the patients, I mean, we wouldn't have gotten to that number, right? So patients did contribute and they donated towards the cause. So it's really nice to see the community just kind of get together and give back. We've done
And
stuff with, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's so nice of you to give credit to the patients. But, listen, there are plenty of organizations that are out there, Publix, Walgreens, et cetera, that always have the roundup for this or donate $1 for that or whatever it is. So I give credit to Curaleaf for getting the patients, making them aware and letting them make that decision to contribute themselves. I mean, don't sell yourself short. You guys are definitely a determining factor in that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the company, again, we've done stuff with Badges of Courage, Epilepsy Florida. So we partnered with them to be able to help them qualify a certain number of patients. So they put together a program for education purposes. We hosted an open forum at one of our dispensaries where we invited potential patients, right? So people who were they're part of the organization, but were kind of unsure about cannabis and how it could have an impact on their treatment, and just invited people over, had a doctor there to kind of educate them, and they ran the whole program with so it's almost a sponsorship of their medicine and introduction to the program, because we all know it's very costly for a first time patient to just enter, right? So
Yeah.
we want to make it a little more approachable and easy for the patients to not only gather the information but have the connection. Sometimes they get lost in the journey of, okay, where do I go now? If I, if what doctor do I see, etc. So the foundation really took care of having the potential patients linked to a doctor, because depending on their medical needs, they referred them to different physicians that they work with, and any questions that they had on the medicine, we definitely answered on our side. So
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question because it's a little interesting, right? With everything that's so restricted in the cannabis space, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but is some of this stuff part of your marketing plan as well? And I'm not saying that you guys are doing it just for attention, but you had mentioned that education is extremely important, and that's a reoccurring theme of this show, right? We need to educate the public on this plant, on its benefits, and how to use it, and the different ways that you can use it, because they're, together we've got to kind of kill that stigma, right? But when you're not able to advertise in traditional means and you're not able to advertise your product, you can kind of do double duty by putting goodwill out into the community, and it drags your name along with it. But I also feel like someone like yourself, like, this is something that you would be doing regardless. It's just that in our industry, you get the added benefit of the PR and the recognition for it, which is not why we do this, but we can't advertise. So we need some kind of avenue.
right. So with the public relations component, it's obviously a key factor for all of us in the industry, right? So when we did again, our partnership with Badges of Courage was very successful, but not all of our efforts are either pitched to the media or even picked up and recognized. So that's really not the intent behind them. I think when the company stands behind an organization and provides goodwill, it is a long-term commitment to the community, and you will see that flourish with time, right? So the PR is definitely essential. I think everybody can acknowledge and recognize that. But for us, the PR component, really, we try to gear more towards educating on that aspect versus highlighting some of these partnerships.
No, it definitely makes sense. And I don't think the intention behind it is for the recognition, but I wish the general public would be a little bit more open about that, because it is a two-way street, right? Hey, we're going to bring some amazing attention to your organization, and in turn we're going to get a little bit of recognition for it. It's what happens. But a lot of people may look down upon that, but I think what you guys are doing is great. And then one of the ones that I'd like to touch on, because I'm very interested in this, is you guys do a lot with veterans as well. If I remember correctly, you guys did kind of like a smaller joint pack, and that goes to veterans. Are you still doing that?
We are. It's our VCP. So that's our VCP product, and they come 5 mini pre-rolls, and then $1 from each purchase goes back to that organization, and they're there to advocate for veterans and accessibility to cannabis, not only in Florida, but nationwide. So we partner with them in various of our states. And we were really excited to be able to launch that in November. So
That's really cool. And I think, it's nice because you guys are donating and helping people who can also benefit from cannabis as well too. Cancer patients, veterans for sure. I did a show with Charles Warner, who is a veteran, and that's a very important cause to him. And there's a good friend of mine that I worked for, Justin Gilfis. I worked for him for a year, and he was he wasn't too big into it himself, but he was a very big advocate to get cannabis to veterans. I love to see that you guys are doing that. Were you guys doing the little joint packs before that, or was that specifically for this campaign?
So we were doing them in other states, but in Florida, we launched it in November. And we've had it, since then. So it's
Okay.
it's a product line. Yeah.
Okay. I there's kind of a loaded reason why I asked that, right? Is I wish more of our MMTCs here in Florida would do that, right? I think there's a fixation, and we're going to transition from all the goodwill that you're doing here. And you'll notice there's no structure to this show whatsoever. We switched from the goodwill to the actual market now, right? I think the gram pre-roll is dumb, and I'll put that out there, right? Especially if you're going to use it by yourself, because it's something that you're going to have. Listen, there are people who can put it down, no problem. You guys are not the norm, right? But it's something that you're going to have to continually relight. I think that smaller delivery mechanism that's a little bit more personal, especially given the times we have right now, is going to be exponentially more successful. And the only people I know that actually do it are you and Rise. GTI has their dog walker brand, and it's kind of not ironic, but it's kind of cool that both of those go towards good causes. So not only do you get something that's really cool, but you're doing good. Do you see a trend? And I'm talking way too much. This should be more about you, but I read an article last night that through the pandemic, that there needs to be more, not lower quality cannabis, but less focus on the craft cannabis and trying to get those THC contents as high as they can, and starting to have more of a focus on the everyday consumer, creating the Bud Lights and the Coors Lights and the Miller Lights of the world. Because when you look at a lot of these industries, and we'll take alcohol, for example, those three beers are what most people drink over the Stellas and the Guinnesses and all the high-end craft stuff. So I know I've rambled for a little bit, but there was a question in there. Do you see a trend coming along towards smaller quantities, less potency, and that kind of stuff?
I definitely see something around the patients going away from this need for this high THC, right? Or what the THC is, and focusing a little bit more on what strain and the terpenes behind them, etc. So there's definitely something there. And as far as definitely not going away from quality, but just making the medicine more affordable. So we launched last Friday, the mini pre-rolls, so similar to what we would do in VCP, but again, because it's there's 5 in there, it's a higher price point. We, as a reaction to everything that's going on, and obviously keeping in mind people's financial constraints, we launched a 2-pack of those minis, right? So where there are shorties, and they come now 2 in a pack. So instead of buying just that 1 gram pre-roll, which you mentioned, you get 2.4s in a tube. And again, it's just a lower price point, so you may not be able to come out and spend X amount, but you can still medicate with something that is affordable and accessible to you. So.
No, and that's really cool. And personally, my view, and we'll get back into some Curaleaf stuff in a second, but I think my view is that in the past, when there would be a social aspect of this, right? I know we're a medical state here, but there would be a tradition, and we'll just talk about the greater cannabis market, where people would pass a joint around a circle or pass whatever they had. Today, we can't really do that, right? So I see the future of this, and you guys seem to be on top of it. Somebody showing up with a pack of 5 minis or 6 minis and giving it to their friends instead of passing it around. It's a lot more hygienic. I mean, it kind of cancels the old circle, or to me, it brings back the circle. You're just not passing it anymore. So I think, I like seeing what you guys are doing there, and I hope to see more of it. But you know, looking at that, we're still talking about the traditional consumer, right? We're talking about the legacy cannabis consumer that's looking to smoke it. For what you guys are doing, where do you see the best way to start bringing in new patients to this industry? So how do you, when you're looking at the general public and you're trying to advocate for Curaleaf and you're trying to advocate for the cannabis industry, how do you look at approaching people who are, soccer moms and normal everyday people that may not have the education? What is usually the entry level there?
So we really have gone away from, or not gone away from, but minimized some of our industry only marketing efforts, right? So again, going back to just educating the general public uh, around there's even a lot of people that we find in the community that don't realize that medical cannabis is legal in the state of Florida, right? So just that alone is interesting. And I walk around with my Curaleaf gear all the time, and when I have been asked, like, oh, where do you, and I get the look like, wait a minute, I think there's a big misconception with the general public of who works in this industry, and we have to kind of break down those barriers. So we have started to go into the general community and general market, whether it's, and again, around our focus on wellness. So we go into yoga festivals, we've done a few vegan festivals, anything that focuses on lifestyle and wellness, we found is a good entry point for us, and really get some good engagement and questions. And obviously that's a longer term plan, but I think that by engaging with the general market and the general community, we will all benefit as a whole, as an industry.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that the people that are the best target for an industry that is so stigmatic is the wellness community, right? You've got this national stigma around cannabis, around the community of a bunch of lazy stoners per se, right? But you truly one plant, like, even if you look at Ricky Williams's brand, Real Wellness, more on the CBD side, they're all about wellness and holistic and people who are interested in taking care of their bodies and are concerned about what goes into it. You would think that the greater audience at one point would recognize, hey, if this person is so concerned about their diet, they're concerned about their health, they're concerned about their athleticism, and cannabis is attracted to them, and this is someone who's done a lot of research, maybe they're on the right page. And I appreciate what you said about opening up the eyes on this industry, that the type of people that are in it. I mean, look at yourself, where you're joining us from today. You're joining us from a beautiful office on the, looks like, right off the highway there with a lake in the background. Perfectly normal. We're both up at, I mean, we complained about it, but 8 o'clock in the morning doing a morning show. But we're not a group of lazy stoners, right? I would put us more in the wellness and healthcare community, and I think you would agree.
No, absolutely. And I think that that was one of the biggest draws for me coming into this industry, was being able to be part of an emerging industry around the wellness factor, right? So we have, and being able to provide a choice on how you medicate and how you deal with your medical issues. So that alone, I think, is very attractive. And unfortunately, depending on your background, I know I speak as a Hispanic, it's definitely very taboo. When I decided to come on board, it was a conversation at my house and with my family, and the eyeballs kind of went open, and it's
Yeah.
and now I can tell you that I have some relatives that have joined the medical community, and they love it, and they're on the older side, and they can't say anything but positive on how it's helped with their pain and things like that. So I think it's just a matter of being open about it. And for the most part, I've found, at least in the Hispanic community, that even the patients that love the medicine are still fearful of sharing their experience. So it's about creating a space where they feel comfortable enough to share that, and that's how those conversations will kind of gear us up.
I couldn't agree with you more on that statement. I think in general, and I've learned that about the Hispanic community. My last name is Rosales, and you know, I'm technically Hispanic, but I can tell you that I was raised in New Jersey. I was raised in Florida. I'm listen, you can get that, right?
Yeah.
But I happened to go down to Canna, Mexico, and I was lucky enough to do, I was a mentor on a track called Cannapreneur. Somehow I fell ass backwards into that, and they thought that I was a lot more successful than I was. But I got to sit down with a lot of young Mexican entrepreneurs that wanted to get into the cannabis space. And they explained that to me, that, you know, whatever the stigma was in the States, down in Mexico, even though at one point in time they had used it regularly with medications and everything else, it was so stigmatic that, you know, it was an impossible conversation to have with the family. And I remember trying to give them some of the advice that I had done in my life, and just looking at them like, hey, you've got to be honest. You've just got to educate them and everything else. And there is a look of fear on their eyes. Like, what, I'm going to give cannabis to my grandmother or my mother, and you do that? I'm like, unfortunately, the only way that you can do that is by proper education. And they're very fearful of it. So I love the fact that you're talking about creating a safe space. And I don't usually like that term in the news, but a safe space for people to talk about cannabis, because it does feel that way. Even at certain cannabis conferences, people will talk about the industry left and right, but when it comes to their own personal use of the product, even if they're a wellness user, it's kind of like they test the waters with who they're talking to. You know, maybe you and I being in the cannabis space, it's not so much, because we're kind of open, you know, we're both wearing our shirts today, and thank you very much for this. It fit a little bit better at the beginning of quarantine, but you know, how do we, and I'm asking you only because you're in a marketing position for, you know, one of the biggest companies in Florida. How do we continue to make these safe spaces to have these conversations, so people who don't use are more comfortable talking and asking questions without feeling like a stoner?
So I think we've tried to do it with within our dispensaries. So we'll have specific nights with different topics where we invite not only patients but members of the community that want to come in and learn, and you know, maybe share their experiences. We also look to our patients to share their stories, going back to the PR side, right? So whenever we can have a patient advocate for the medicine, and the difference it's really made in their life, I think that that's key, because people will relate more towards another person versus a company speaking. And I think that there's value there. So I can stand and say something about the medicine, but I work for Curealeaf, versus a patient that has no ties to the company. When they say something, the patients, I think, kind of will absorb the information in a different way and feel like a little more relatable. So although we try to make our space as non-pretentious as possible, and we really encourage the ask us anything mentality when you come into our dispensaries, or you visit us at a booth, we're out in the community through social media, whatever it may be. I definitely think the patient to patient engagement is key there. And so anything that we can do to help facilitate those forums is definitely something that we try to do.
No, that's very cool. Actually, you know, it's funny, talking about that point that you just made, that it sounds better from a patient telling them. You know, people try to relate more to people that have similar backstories. It's similar to a point that Kevin Hart just brought up on the Joe Rogan show. He did a partnership with JP Morgan about helping kids in Black communities learn finances, and basically said to JP Morgan, like, no, you're not sending a JP Morgan suit into this community to do it the JP Morgan way. You need someone from that community, someone who's been through what they've been through, to tell them and show them how they got out of it and give them their own experiences. I feel that you guys are doing the exact same thing with the patient community and educating that way. And it's probably, I can imagine, being a great topic or a great tactic for you to get the education out there. You know, I'm starting to find a trend here. It seems like, and I think you mentioned this earlier, so I'm probably just repeating you, but education seems to be one of your number one marketing tactics, right? It's you guys are putting that education out there, and not only, you know, I give you credit because not only are you advocating for Curaleaf, but you're really just advancing the industry altogether. Would you say that education is one of the primary pillars of your marketing strategy?
Absolutely. And it's education and really connecting with our patients. So whether it is our outreach team who is out in the field at events, and then, we've had some of our uh, outreach members say, hey, I met so-and-so at, the vegan festival, and now I'm going to meet them next Saturday at the dispensary because they're going to, come in for the first time, and we want to kind of walk them through. And it's about making that connection with a patient, right? So sometimes the patients are a little nervous with the first time they're walking into a dispensary, and if they already met somebody from our team out in the field, although they don't necessarily work in the dispensary, it just makes them feel a little more comfortable. And so we've taken it that far, as well as follow-up calls. So our associates, when you come into our dispensary after 3 days, they will call you, hey, how's it going? Do you need anything else? Do you like the results you're seeing? And really take an interest in how the medicine is working, for each individual patient, because as we all know, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the next. And so I think it's important to make that connection and make it available for patients to just feel comfortable. And so education
Very
for sure
cool.
is top.
That's really cool. I mean, the retail experience that you just created by doing that is incredible. I mean, so somebody meets somebody at a festival and then makes an appointment with them to come into the store. I mean, that's personal shop. That's like Barney's level retail. And I
Right.
probably shouldn't use them because I think they went out of business. But that's New York Fifth Avenue's type shopping where you have a personal shop. I met this person at a music festival. Then they were at the store and were able to guide me through it. I can't think of a more personalized experience. Do you think, and I'll ask you to put your marketing generalist hat back on, not just the cannabis community, do you think that retail as a whole can learn from that experience? And honestly, with what cannabis has done with the white glove service, and I know that term is used way too much in every industry, but do you think that retail in general can learn lessons from what the cannabis industry is doing? I mean, I listen, and I'm name dropping a lot here, but I like to give credit to other people. I listened to Matt Hawkins from Entourage Effect Capital on the Green Entrepreneur podcast, and he was saying that, cannabis was one of the first retailers, because we were deemed essentials, to do the mask and glove and do the curbside and create these protocols for operating retail in a pandemic. Do you think the greater retail industry has lessons to learn from you, from us?
I think absolutely. I mean, we, as you mentioned, we were deemed essential, right? So quickly we adjusted, went to curbside only and home deliveries, keeping our staff and our patients' wellness in mind. So, I think when you have to adjust quickly, you kind of set that path, right? And so we're constantly growing and evolving, but always focused on our patient base. So by doing so versus just saying, okay, this is a business tactic, I think that you kind of lay the ground for something that is going to be bigger and better, right? So I think in general, you will start seeing larger scale companies in the retail space have to adjust and modify. So, it's going to be a change for everybody, I think. And I'm glad that we were kind of at the forefront of it.
No, I think it's great. I think the cannabis industry has done a phenomenal job dealing with the pandemic. I hope that this brings the right attention to our industry, and I hope it pushes it forward. But I can tell you, I think we kind of take for granted where we are in our industry because, I talk to people outside of it, my neighbors, for example, and when I tell them that A, it was deemed essential, their mind is blown. Then when I tell them here in the state of Florida that if I wanted to make a purchase or get my medication, that I can go to Curealeaf.com. I got to click on the state of Florida, but I can literally go on your website, see what you have, place an order, and typically within 24 to 48 hours, it's at my house. It wasn't too long ago, and I'm not sure what the legal ramifications are of this, but it wasn't too long ago that I was going to some weird neighborhood and getting into someone's car to get it, right? Or having some kid come to my house. I remember being 33 years old, going to some kid's house in his parents' garage. And I'm like, this is not the way that you need to do this. So I think it blows people's mind that literally I can go to Curealeaf.com, place an order, and a beautiful delivery van shows up in a very professional manner with great packaging and everything else. And it's as convenient as ordering a pizza or something off of Amazon. It's crazy to me. What, what other kind of innovations are we seeing in the cannabis industry going forward?
Well, just to kind of touch up on what you just mentioned,
Please
I
do.
think it's also important to note that, when you're purchasing from the medical cannabis industry, so like with our website, for example, you made a purchase and you have your batch number, you can go on and see exactly what it is you're consuming. So for us, that clarity around the consumption is key. So patients can have information, right? So if you want it, it's there. If you don't, that's okay. But you know what is going into your medicine and what you are, using to medicate. And I think that's really important versus what happens in the black market that, you don't really know what's going on, what you're actually picking up. So, yeah, I think.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right, and that goes back to me taking for granted the things that us in the industry know. Like, yes, that's the number one reason. It's two. One, number one reason why I got my card. I can tell you, I've got a buddy of mine who recently gave me a joint that was from the black market, and it's been sitting there. I haven't touched it. No reason why. I don't assume there's anything bad in it or anything else, but there's just that for some reason, now that I've been a legal patient, I've been doing things the right way and I know what I'm putting into my body. That's been sitting there because there's just like this fear in the back of my mind of it. So I love what you guys are doing with lab testing and telling us exactly what's in our body. Um, you know, it's it's just amazing to me. It's amazing to me where we've come from 2010 when it got legalized in Colorado to 2020, seeing companies like yourself in the state of Florida having, 20 plus dispensaries, I believe, 28 locations, and just a wealth of products, right? Talk to us a little bit about your product lines. What are some of your favorite things outside of the flower realm, and where do you really see opportunity for Curaleaf and the cannabis industry to grow outside of smokable flower?
So, for me personally, I really like our CBD tincture. May not be as exciting as some of the other products, right? But I feel like it definitely helps me, and that's probably my favorite. Um, as we grow it as a company, we're definitely putting a lot behind innovation and just releasing some fun stuff. Hopefully Q3, Q4. But with all the research and product testing prior, right? So as everybody knows, everything is changing on a daily basis in Florida. So we're kind of just keeping tabs on what will be allowed and not, and when, and trying to stay as close to that and attuned to that information as possible, so that we're prepping ahead of time. And so I think there's definitely space for growth as far as the diversity in our product selection, but it's really going to be mandated by what the state is going to allow, right? So because we're a national brand, we are able to benefit from the fact that in other states we may already have product development. So once we're ready in the state of Florida, the research has already been done, and so we're ready to go. So
That's incredible. And on that note, I know that you sit down here in Florida. How often do you interact with your peers around the country, and how much do you exchange ideas, and how much can one strategy translate from one market to another?
So we have at least 3 conversations a week, depending on whether it's all of us together as a field marketing team, or just with our VP of marketing, or our CMO, right? So there's constant conversations going on, and there's definitely sharing. So although something that works in New York may not work here, it can trigger and ignite an idea, and we kind of twist it. So right. So I'll speak to our marketing director in New York, and she will say, okay, this is how we're working on patient acquisition, for example. They have very different regulations than we do, but trust me that going back and forth is, as idea sharers, things come up. So it's about learning from each other, what worked, what didn't work, and how we can make it work within our space. So
very cool. And then I had another question, and then I forgot it, which is not good considering we're on camera. Oh man. So actually, I'm going to take this opportunity to do a little bit of a promotion, because we're getting to the top of the hour here. Oh, before I do that, let's go back. I remembered it. We had mentioned before the podcast, and this is why I can't do shows at 8 a.m. because that's probably hasn't happened yet, but you're our 36th episode. I'm sure I'm going to start making some mistakes sooner or later, but you had talked about going through a rebranding here. Is that something that you're able to share with us about what you guys are doing, or is that kind of a top secret and I've already let too much out?
No. I mean, you're wearing part of our rebranded merch. So we
sure
kept,
am.
We kept our logo.
I should have put my coffee in here.
There you go. And you can put the snacks in the bottom. So when you're out and about, but, it's more of an aesthetics rebrand, and we're really excited to introduce it to the Florida market. So you're going to start seeing some of our dispensaries go through kind of a rebrand shift in probably Q3, Q4. And obviously with the introduction of Select to our portfolio, we're really excited about that coming into the market towards the end of the year. So can't go too much into depth there, but definitely excited to bring the West Coast brand into the East Coast. So we have we've been launching it little by little, and looking forward to it. I think that they're going to bring some diversity to our portfolio for sure.
That's very cool. And I'm looking forward to that. We're vertically integrated in Florida, but it is nice to see that kind of diverse feel with different brands, even if they're all within the same house and they're all grown, even if they're all grown in the same greenhouse, if they're treated differently and everything else, you've got different growers with different, strategies and everything else. I think I like seeing that in Florida. And if you guys can bring in some of that West Coast flavor, that's going to be really cool. I actually have to commend you. The other shirt that you guys sent me that is long sleeve, which I've worn in the house, at night when the AC is cold, it's got that 360 flower on it. That's a really cool shirt. Is that part of one of the newer ones?
Yes, it is. It is. So we're definitely changing our look a little bit. So that was one of my favorites for sure. We launched that in January, I think.
And for no reason whatsoever other than, I still feel the stigma on this industry. I tend not to wear a lot of cannabis branded stuff. The corporate stuff, that like a logo like this I'll wear, but I don't wear a lot of stuff with a leaf on it. That shirt is an exception. That shirt is pretty badass. And on that note, I'm going to go what I did right before. I forgot what I was going to say. And we're going to announce a little giveaway here. You were kind enough to send me a ton of stuff. And actually you sent some stuff to Evan Bopp, who's our behind the scene guy. And I just want to mention Evan by name because I'm the dude on camera. I get a lot of the credit. I get a lot of credit for the things that C-Lab is doing. That none of that to me, guys. This is what I do. You see me on camera. It's after the camera gets turned off. Evan does all the work. Potent Brands, Kid rocks it. So thank you for sending us a bunch of stuff. But you had sent us a bunch of these gift cards. And as much as I would love to keep all this $25 off for myself, we're going to go ahead and spread the love. So for the next 20 people that subscribe to our YouTube, subscribe to our Instagram, you will be getting a $25 off Curaleaf gift card. Hopefully they're transferable. Otherwise it's worthless. But we're going to go ahead and give you the gift card for the next 20 people who subscribe to both our YouTube and Instagram. We're the Cannabis Lab on Instagram and Elevate Your Grind on YouTube. Just look for those both. And then of those 20 people, we're going to go ahead and put together a little gift basket for you. We've got some great stuff. Grab this here. I'm sure not prepared to talk about this, but this is one of the coolest things that I've seen. This is a smell proof and locking container. For those of you that are parents, this is an absolute necessity. Trust me. That's why you're only getting one of these instead of the two that they sent me. And, you know, I'm not even sure if I'm going to add this one to the basket as well because I like it that much. But we've got some really cool stuff for you. So if you guys want a care package from Curaleaf, please go to YouTube, go to Instagram, subscribe to the Cannabis Lab. Again, on YouTube, it's Elevate Your Grind. And, you know, we're really happy to do this. And thank you so much for sending us all the information. Sending us the care pack. You guys are going to get some of these cool, like these little lighters in here. I've never done a giveaway, so I'm just rambling. But nice torch lighter. Is that even showing up on camera? It is. So thank you so much. You guys, I got to say, as far as swag goes, you've done a very good job. And I think I'm going to give you credit for that personally.
Thank you. That goes up to my corporate team, but I appreciate it. I should definitely share the love up there.
Nope. So as far as I'm concerned, it is all you. I'm giving you at least in this state.
I'll take it.
All right. All right, cool. Well, I've held you for 45 minutes. You know, I've got a hectic morning and everything else, but these morning shows are fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for picking 8 a.m. And what can we, before we let everybody go, what can we promote for you? What can we look forward to seeing from you this year?
Look out for Select launching, as I mentioned, towards the end of the year. That's definitely going to be some exciting stuff. And for this weekend specifically, we've got 3 bundle packages around our flower, going back to those, 2 shorties in a tube and some of our pre-rolls and our flower eighths. So there are launch off packages. So some great savings there. Thanks again for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Sorry I woke you up earlier. But I'm glad we did it in the morning. So
no worries. You know, anytime you want me to wake up and do a show like this, more than happy to do it. When you guys launch Select, just remember your favorite little podcast. I know I've got to compete with Pete and Nurse Colleen, but hopefully you show us some love too. We'd love to have you on for some future announcements. And thank you again so much. It was a pleasure to have you.
Definitely love to be back. Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, before we go, guys, just want to give you a few updates. We had an awesome panel last night led by Eric Stevens on Meet the Doctors. It's a phenomenal educational panel. If you want to check it out, go to our Facebook page at Canna Business Group. It was a phenomenal panel. It's about an hour. I highly recommend checking it out. If you want to learn more about the medical side of cannabis, if you want to know the issues facing our patients, it was probably one of the best panels we've done on that topic. Coming up on June 11th is our next panel, Investing in Cannabis. This year was supposed to be pretty turbulent for the cannabis industry as it is. Now that we've been deemed essential, check out our experts. I mentioned Matt Hawkins from Entourage Effect Capital. He will be on the panel along with some other great panelists as well. Next week, join us on June 2nd. We've got Arby Barrasso of Green Roads. Arby's got an amazing story. This is not one you're going to want to miss. And then on, I believe, Thursday, the 4th, we have Jake Bullock of Cann. If you're unfamiliar with Cann, it is a THC-infused seltzer. So we're getting into a little bit of beverages here. Should be an awesome episode. Guys, Cannabis Lab, to me, we're one of the best groups in Florida. You need to be a part of it. If you're in this industry in the state of Florida, you should join. For that, www.joinclab.com. Check it out. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like, give us a subscribe. Check us out on YouTube. Elevate Your Grind. Please subscribe to the show if you like it. That is how we keep going. The more subscribers we get, the more Robert's going to let me do this show. As always, folks, I had a great time this morning. I'm glad you woke up with me. I learned something. I hope you did too, and we'll see you next time.